You see what comes of all this running around, Mr. Bond? All this jumping and fighting, it's exhausting.
Yeah, that was exhausting. I mean, it was good, but you need to know what you're getting into with this movie, okay? Like, it's seriously exhausting.
Have you given any thought to where this ends? The table will never stop. You know this. No one, not even you, can kill everyone.
Okay, so obviously I really enjoyed John Wick Chapter 4. I loved the very first one. I loved the second one. I loved the third one. So, like, this was a movie I was very anticipating simply because I liked the previous three. They weren't changing any of the people behind the cameras that much. They still had a lot of the same people. They had a lot of the same actors. So it's like, yeah, it's going to be good. So the question was, how good though? And this isn't a perfect movie in my opinion. There's a couple of mistakes it makes that prevents it from being one of my rare 11 out of 11 movies or games. But that in mind, it's not that many issues. It's just kind of like a couple of like nitpicky things that I couldn't just ignore. And because there's so few negatives with this movie, I'm going to start off with the negatives first, and then I'm going to spend the rest of the video praising this movie. So, one of my biggest issues with this film is the fact that you cannot really enjoy this by itself. This is something that needs to be viewed with the previous three films, especially the last one, John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum. The only one in the series that has a subtitle for some reason. But yeah, no, like, just, if you were to go in fresh to this movie, not only are you going to be lost, you're going to not be invested in any of the characters, and it's just like, is Keanu Reeves kind of just like skating on through this film? Because he doesn't have a terrible amount of lines in this. He's not even kind of one of the central focal characters in this one. He's just kind of there. He's there to do a lot of action scenes. He's there to say, yeah. But like, the plot of John Wick's story was more established in 1, 2, and Chapter 3. And by Chapter 4, it's like, hey, we already know who John Wick is. Let's focus more on some of these other characters. And in a way, I don't hate that. It's just, it's a little weird seeing how the movie is called John Wick. And John Wick, kind of, in terms of character, story arc, and whatnot, he's kind of barely in it. Now, don't worry, Keanu Reeves is in this a lot, in the action scenes. But, like, you do need to watch the previous ones to be able to enjoy this ride. It's like getting onto a roller coaster ride towards the end of the ride. You want the full experience. So if you're not interested in watching 4 movies, then you're kind of out already then. But, like, another thing, I was going to let it skate by, but I just had to kind of, like, yeah, I can't not say anything, is some of the action sequences get so fucking ridiculous that I was just flat out laughing my ass off in the theater. Like, I called bullshit at one time. It's like, yeah, bullshit. He would not have survived that. Not that. I know he's John Wick. There's no way he would have survived that. I'm sorry. I'll shut up. You know, in the theater, like, I had to laugh at some of these scenes because they just got so ridiculous. Like, really? 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 Thankfully, it's not constant throughout the movie, but it's like every major, like, 20 to 30 minute action set piece had a moment like that in the set piece. And so, You know, it's just like, happy once, like, forgive it, happy a second time, it's like, okay, you're kind of pushing, guys. Happy a third time, and then a fourth time, it's like, okay, I gotta say something. And so I don't say it makes the movie unwatchable, it's just like, there's a few times you're gonna laugh your ass off at some of the scenes. Simply because it's like, yeah, right, no, that would not have happened. Probably the other thing that bugged me, and I would have let it slide, but it just happened too many times, were the NPCs. And what I mean by that are the bystanders in a lot of these scenes. A lot of people in the movie who are not part of this, like, underworld, they don't react to this underworld bleeding into their reality. And when I saw it happen the first time in this movie, it was just like, was that just a oversight by the filmmakers? They were so busy with the choreography, they just kind of overlooked that one scene. But then it happened again, and it's like, okay, why is that oversight? And then it kept happening again and again. It's just like, okay, is this like a joke? And to elaborate, like in the first John Wick movie, when the nightclub scene shootout happens, one of the greatest action scenes I've ever seen in my life, and that's what like sold me on John Wick, the very first movie. When that nightclub shootout scene starts happening, initially, yeah, a lot of people don't notice that there's a shootout happening, but in about a minute of the fight scene runtime, the room kind of clears out. Every bystander has run away, and at one point, it's just John Wick and the security guards in this massive open nightclub where everyone has fled. And it's like, okay, that's kind of realistic. They didn't hear the gunshots at first because of the loud music, but once they started hearing rapid gunfire, it's like everyone got the fuck out of Dodge. And even in like the second and third film, I still kind of had that sense of realism with a lot of the non-underworld bystanders that get caught in the crossfire. It's like, yeah, they get the hell out of there. In this movie, they act a little bit different. Like in the nightclub scene, you have John Wick killing like 25 people in close contact with a lot of non-hostile bystanders, and do they react to a person's head blowing up or gunfire going off next to yours? Nope! They just keep dancing like it's their last night on Earth. I mean, seriously, like, there's one person, like, chunks of brain get hit all over him, and he's still dancing away, like, oh, another head exploded, oh, blood's all over my face, and in reality, the person was like, oh my gosh, run! I mean, like, all the NPCs, like, act like this. It's so weird. It's, like, uncanny. And then, like, later on, gunfight happens in the middle of the street. In reality, a lot of the cars would stop, avoid it, swerve out of the way. You'd kind of get, like, a dead standstill at that gunshot battle happening in this street. What does everyone do? Everyone acts like they're late to the greatest job interview ever. They're not stopping for anyone. I mean, just the NPCs do not feel realistic in this movie at all. But in terms of the negatives, that's kind of where it ends, simply because the rest is just praise. And like the star of the movie is like the top tier action fight choreography. The fight choreography is spectacularly sublime in this. There is some truly top shelf, amazing, non-stop action in this. Not a lot of quick cuts. It was very clear that everyone had to learn fight choreography with this. You couldn't have anyone half-ass it, so there wasn't really a lot of fight scenes where you see someone fighting and there's like 39 cuts for one punch to make the person look like a better fighter, which it never does, but Hollywood thinks it does. And so like the action choreography of this movie is like second to none. The only other movies that have probably like be in this would be one of the other 3 John Wick movies. Like, that's it. It's like, this is in the top leagues with the other John Wick movies. There's not a lot of other movies that can beat the fight choreography in this one. And anyone that you could say came close is done by like David Leitch or one of the guys who worked on the John Wick films. And that leads to like another surprising moment where there's this one new female character they introduce, and like she looks like she's 90 pounds wet. Okay, she doesn't look like she would be able to handle herself in a fight at all. And once you start seeing her in a fight scene, it's just like, oh, so that's how a realistic fight with a woman against a guy 190 pounds heavier than her would look like. Could we start seeing more of that in these female-led action movies? Like, I always roll my eyes whenever I see a TV show or an action movie where this like 90-pound woman can just like do like this limp wrist slap on a guy 3 times her size and he just falls over like a little pussy. And it's just like, it's so unrealistic. It takes me out of experience. I just roll my eyes. It's some of the laziest filming ever in the past couple of years. And in John Wick Chapter 4, it's like, hey guys, so we got this 90-pound woman and we got this 200-pound man. How could we make it look realistic for her to take him down? Well, we have a couple of these like techniques that an actual 90-pound woman could do on a guy actually 200 pounds. Like, let's do that. And it's like beautiful seeing how this woman fights these men much larger than her. It doesn't look like the camera's doing these little tricks to make her look better at fighting. It actually looks like she can take down 12 200-pound men. And it's incredible. I want to see more female-led action films do this kind of fighting. This more realistic style of fighting. And then moving on to other types of fight choreography, I used to really love the fight choreography in the Daredevil TV series with Charlie Cox, and after seeing Donnie Yen playing the blind kung fu master in John Wick Chapter 4, it's like, okay, so Daredevil with Charlie Cox, that's how we originally thought a blind kung fu master would fight. And John Wick Chapter 4, that's actually how a blind kung fu master would fight. And it's incredible because it's not perfect. There's actually some real sloppiness to the fight choreography with Donnie Yen because he's playing a blind kung fu master. But there's like an elegance to some of the sloppiness because it's like, okay, like that was a little sloppy because the dude is fucking blind. Of course it would be a little sloppy. But he does make up for it in just sheer fucking awesomeness as well. And also there's some great little like cheats that Donnie Yen does because he's fighting blind, and it's incredibly awesome. And speaking of Donnie Yen, I would say outside of the action, Donnie Yen was the star of this movie. I mean, Donnie Yen is always fucking awesome, but in this movie it's just like, when the post-credit scene rolled, it's like, yeah, I would totally spend top premium prices for a movie ticket to see a spin-off following Donnie Yen's character, Kane. It's just like, yeah, he was a fun character. He worked well with the other actors. It was just such a fun character. And it's like, I want to know more about this character. I want to see what happens next with this character. I could easily see a Donnie Yen Kane trilogy happening with this character because it was just so much fun. And Donnie Yen really put a lot of fun charisma into the role. I honestly, in hindsight, I don't see any other actor pulling this role off but Donnie Yen. And I would say that this is easily one of Donnie Yen's best, if not his best character he has ever done. I absolutely loved it, and I totally want to see another movie with Donnie Yen in this universe. And I guess because this movie is so successful right now, they're looking at doing a spin-off movie following Donnie Yen. And then just another thing I'd like to point out, I absolutely died from joy when they did that epic Warriors reference. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch the movie The Warriors, And you know the reference I'm talking about when you see John Wick Chapter 4. It is just so obvious because I'm in the theater. I was just like, huh, it's funny. This is kind of like that scene from The Warriors. It's odd. This is a lot like that scene from The Warriors. Okay, this is just flat out a blatant ripoff or homage to the scene from The Warriors, from the music to the camera angles to like everything. And so I absolutely love the Warriors reference. And another thing I really liked, it's a little bit more obscure and niche, but I loved the John Wick Hex reference as well. There's, if you haven't played that game, John Wick Hex, it's like a top-down shooter, and they do a homage to that game. I mean, there's no other way to see it. Like, obviously, it's like, hey guys, you know that someone made a video game about this film franchise? Oh yeah, what's it like? It's a top-down, like, isometric shooter. It's like, oh, let's do a sequence like that. It's like, okay. So it's a fun it's a fun sequence, and I absolutely love the reference to John Wick Hex. And then another surprise was Scott Atkins. He's in a kind of small segment. He's not in the movie that much, but what little sequence he is in, he really does a good job on trying to steal the spotlight from Donnie Yen and Keanu Reeves. I mean, going onto the camera with those two heavyweight actors is already, like, challenging enough. Probably the only person who could have done it is Scott Atkins, who is a badass in his own right if you look at his filmography. But, like, just seeing him kind of steal the glory of the spotlight from Donnie Yen and Keanu Reeves in this one scene is just, like, I would not scoff if someone said this is Scott Atkins' best acting performance. Now, granted, it's a very silly performance, but he really has as much fun as he possibly can with this performance. This was not a cash-in for Scott Atkins. This was like, hey, I'm just going to have a blast with this. And so I love that. And then another thing I want to point out is Bill Skarsgård. He plays kind of the big villain in this movie, and yes, he does a good job being kind of intimidating without being someone who can kick your ass. But the thing I noticed most about Bill Skarsgård are his suits. Oh my gosh, these are some of the most exquisite, beautiful, gorgeous men's suits I have ever seen. Like, every time he walks on screen, he's in a new, extravagantly beautiful men's suit. And it's just like, I want that. And then the next scene with him, it's like, okay, I want that one. I mean, like, these things are, like, masculinely gorgeous. They are just, like, beautifully designed. These suits make the suit from Die Hard that Alan Rickman was commenting on look like swill. I mean, when he's talking about John Phillips, I have to myself. Yeah, those look like sack bags compared to the men's suits that Bill Skarsgård was wearing. It's just like, oh my gosh, I want to wear one of those. I mean, these things are just absolutely beautiful. I know I'm spending a lot of time on these suits, but I mean, they are just extravagantly gorgeous, and I bet they are very expensive. At the same time, Bill Skarsgård did a good job playing the main bad guy. And of course, there's a couple other people in this I don't want to spoil. Like, there is this one legendary actor from the 80s and 90s who's been in, like, everything. He's in this, and when I saw him, I was like, oh, that's awesome, he's in this. This is going to be fun. And so, I've spent a little bit more time than usual on a movie praising this. But, yeah, John Wick Chapter 4 was a fun-ass time at the theater. A couple of criticisms I had, but honestly, I can forgive those going into the movie. This is not a perfect movie, but I would say that it's at least this. This was a fun time. This was an entertaining time. I want to see more done with this series, and I want to see more done with this series with the same crew and group of people who've worked on this one and the previous 3 films. They know how to make a good action movie. They know how not to fuck it up. And I'd be happy seeing these people make more movies in this series for the foreseeable future. And so, yeah, I would say John Wick Chapter 4 is a great fun time at the theater. It's almost 3 hours, and it goes by pretty quick because it's like 2.5 hours of action with like 20 minutes of stuff in between. I am exaggerating a little bit, but this is a fun time at the theater, and I would say you will get your money's worth out of the price of admission. Anyway, that's been my review of John Wick Chapter 4. My name's Christopher Connell with 11 Hour Reviews, and that will be all for today.